I just don't know what's wrong with me. I've enjoyed doing videos, but for the last month or so, I keep having problems with getting one out. Every time I picked up a controller, I can't seem to make much progress in the game before I just give up. What do you think? The problem with that is I don't have the money and you're closer. The thing is that I have all of these fun ideas, but I can't seem to get a review out. I wanted to review Blinks, but couldn't get very far. That couldn't hurt. In fact, I think I might actually have a good idea for a game in mind.
The human mind. 600 miles of synaptic fiber, 5.5 ounces of cranial fluid, 1,500 grams of complex neural matter. A 3-pound pile of dreams. But I'll tell you what it really is. It is the ultimate battlefield and the ultimate weapon. The wars of this modern age, the psychic age, are all fought somewhere between these damp, curvaceous undulations.
Ah, Psychonauts. I've always had a strange history with the game. I didn't grow up with a game system to call my own outside of a Game Boy Advance. Besides, in 2005, I didn't really know much about video games. But I vividly remember coming home and accidentally tuning into an episode of X-Play. Having never seen the show before, I didn't know what to expect. All I saw was the review of Psychonauts, but it had enough to have me intrigued. Honestly, I was a bit frightened, though that was mostly due to the kids sneezing their brains out. And frankly, the idea of lobotomy or anything dealing with brains or surgery in general makes me a bit squeamish. But what I saw fascinated me. To be fair, I wouldn't have a chance to play the game myself until years later when I got a hand-me-down Xbox 360 and downloaded the game to my system. I fell in love with the Tim Burton-esque feel of the game and the unique concepts. Now, the game begins with Rasputin, a young boy with powerful psychic abilities. Somehow, he's able to sneak into a summer camp for other young psychics, which is also run by some of the best psychonauts in the business.
You've broken into a highly classified remote government training facility.
I know. Isn't it great?
Unfortunately, he needs his parents' permission to be here, so the adults in charge plan to call his parents to come pick him up. But in the meantime, they are allowing him to learn more about his abilities until they come. That gives Raz just about 24 hours to learn the abilities that the camp teaches, but don't worry, that's more than enough time for shit to start hitting the fan. After dealing with Coach Oleander's basic braining, Raz is invited to Sasha 9's lab to test his psychic abilities, only for Raz to have a vision of one of the other kids in the camp having their brain stolen by a mad doctor by the name of Dr. Lobato. Hilariously enough, this man is a dentist. A name like that, you think he'd be a brain surgeon. Thinking this is important, he goes to tell the adults running the camp, but they think this is all in his head, just having a weird dream. It's not until he sees Dogen come out of the lake seemingly in a daze that he learns that the vision he had was real. Unfortunately, all the adults are suddenly whisked away on, quote, important Psychonauts business, which is clearly a trap. So Raz is forced to work with the only adult still in the camp, Agent Ford Cruller. Ford was one of the best of the Psychonauts, so Raz theoretically is in good hands. The problem is he was an elite agent. Sometime years ago, his mind was fractured into multiple personalities, and he's no longer the man he once was. In fact, you can see him around camp taking multiple different roles. He can be the chef at the lounge, and later you see him the camp ranger. Unfortunately, this senile old man is the best chance Raz has to save the brains of the kids at the camp. Now, we learn the plan of the main villain of this game from the brain tumbler experiment that Sasha has Raz take. While they believe Raz is inside his own mind, he is actually in a separate part of Coach Oleander's mind from the one that you see at the beginning of the game. In the brain tumbler experiment, you see the plan to take the brains of psychics out and put them into battle-ready tanks so Oleander can take over the world. Don't ask me why he decides that the kids of summer camp are the best candidates. The man clearly has a few issues that we will have to help him resolve later. In the meantime, Raz has to go over to the other side of the lake to an insane asylum where Dr. Lobato is working. Frankly, it's a bit odd that there just happens to be an insane asylum across the lake from a summer camp for psychic kids. If I had to guess, the land was cheap. I mean, it was allegedly an Indian burial ground.
And, oh my gosh! Indians buried their dead here?
Ew! I hope not. No, stupid. They buried their arrowheads here.
Funnily enough, that scene is how they explain these psychic arrowheads. And just, dear God, I love this game's writing. There are plenty of other great moments, like Raz seeing a kid use a squirrel's nuts and clairvoyance to peek into the girl's cabin.
Could you say acorns instead of nuts if you repeat that to anybody else?
People always bring up the Milkman conspiracy when they talk about great moments of this game, but there are also great scenes in some of the other stages, like Lungfishopolis, where you get to play a kaiju to a bunch of small little fish monsters. Turns out that Oleander had gotten the lungfish and mutated it into this large monster before brainwashing it into kidnapping kids for his plan. Poor thing.
That poor little thing just tried to kill me about 8 different ways.
Well, that's not its fault. This was once just a normal-sized lungfish, minding its own business in a mucus-lined air bubble beneath a semi-dry lake bed. But judging by the work done on it, I suspect Maury has mutated it, accelerated its growth, and has placed an implant in its brain to make it do his evil bidding.
Whoa. Poor little thing.
Once we get the fish on our side, they bring us to the asylum, where we meet some strange people after learning the lungfish's name is Linda.
What a magical lady.
We meet Boyd, the asylum guard obsessed with a conspiracy theory about this mysterious milkman. Once inside his twisted mind, we learn the reason for his crazy conspiracies is down to him constantly losing jobs and creating a dangerous persona to take revenge. That's something I do enjoy about each mind you go into. They each have these memory vaults that explain more of each character's backstory. A ton of them are fairly interesting and actually kind of tragic. In fact, one of the hidden ones that you can find in Mia's dance party explains that she used to work at an orphanage helping the kids there before it burned to the ground. Yeah, even for the rating this game originally was, which was T for teen, that's pretty fucking dark. And hell, there was cut content that probably would have given the game an M rating had it stayed in. After helping Boyd remember that he is the eponymous milkman, we meet Fred, an asylum orderly who went mad after losing a game based on the Battle of Waterloo and is haunted by a memory of his ancestor, Napoleon Bonaparte. We also meet Gloria Van Grouten, a former actress driven insane after her estranged mother committed suicide. And lastly, in the insane asylum, we meet Edgar Teglet, a painter whose girlfriend cheated on him with the male captain of the cheer squad. Hilariously enough, out of all of the people in this insane asylum, Edgar is probably the one that seems the most sane. I mean, he clearly has issues, but nothing that can't easily be fixed by, talking to the guy and resolving these issues. These stages are probably my favorite in the game. Milkman Conspiracy is known as one of the most popular stages in the game, most likely because it's just unique. The stage takes place in a large suburb that twists and bends in unique ways, akin to how Boyd's mind is twisted and messed up after all of this rejection that he's gone through his entire life. Secret agents around the stage are trying to learn who the Milkman is, and there's even a group of Girl Scouts that are more than a little shady. Gloria's mind takes place on a theater stage where you can switch the lighting of a set to change the mood of a scene, while dealing with a phantom that is haunting the actors. Hell, you later learn that the Phantom himself is really the asshole theater critic that constantly criticizes everything in the actors and you do. In fact, there's a small Easter egg in this stage where if you use the clairvoyance ability on the Phantom while you're chasing him through the rafters, you'll see that the Phantom sees Raz as 1.5 stars, which is how the critic also sees Raz. It's a minor thing, but I wanted to bring it up because it is kind of interesting that they do that. Fred's mind is kind of interesting to me. The main idea here is the board game he is stuck playing in his mind. You can actually jump onto the board and shrink down to the size of the game pieces to move them. Fundamentally, this is one of the easier levels to finish, as all you really have to do is talk to the different soldiers and fix their needs before moving them to attack Napoleon's troops and eventually take his castle. That being said, trying to 100% this stage is a pain in the ass. And granted, that's mostly down to the Figment, Psychonauts' equivalent of Mario's coins, as they are pretty well hidden. Lastly, we have Edgar's mind, known as Black Velvetopia. Visually, I adore this stage, with it having a bit of black light and neon look to it. That being said, the main obstacle here, the rampaging bull running through the streets, is a bit of a pain. And I recommend, if you are trying to 100% in this game, wait until you finish the stage before getting all of the collectibles. Because that way you wouldn't have to deal with the bull. Just an idea. Once all of the patients of the insane asylum are effectively cured, we can finally climb the ladder and collect the stolen brains of the kids. Granted, there are a few here or there before you climb the tower that you can get. Each of the brains you save and return to Agent Cruller extends your health. And I do find it kind of funny that the more you collect, the easier the game theoretically becomes, as your abilities get upgraded. Hell, the last 2 upgrades you get are even health regeneration and infinite ammo for both the Psyblast and the Confusion grenades. So, if you are completing this game, by the end, you are fucking powerful. Now, as we climb the tower, there is a strange figure that is washing Raz, hiding when you get close to them. Once near the top, the figure, a female Igor literally named Shigor, warns Raz that he'll regret going any further. Of course, he doesn't listen as he is trying to save Lily, his girlfriend.
I think she...
I only meant that she is your friend who was a girl, Goggalor.
As well as Sasha and Mia, who had been tricked into going before having their brains removed as well. Luckily, the only reason Lily's brain hasn't been sneezed out, like the rest, is she ironically got a head cold, so the sneezing powder that Dr. Lobato uses has no effect on her. And good thing too, because it gives us enough time to both get to her and save her. To do so, we have to save Shugor's pet turtle, Mr. Pokelobe, from being turned into soup. It's not that hard, all you really have to do is get a piece of birthday cake and get Mr. Pokelobe out of his little tank. Once freed from Dr. Lobato's grasp, Mr. Pokelobe, who apparently can talk and has his own psychic abilities, suggests putting his brain into the brain tank so he can blast Lobato and free the brains of Sasha and Mia. No idea how a turtle has psychic abilities, but his plan does end up working, as we save both agents and leave the asylum as it blows up. For the record, the reason it does this is after we helped Boyd, he went into his milkman persona and is about to throw a flammable bottle of milk at the asylum to burn it to the ground. For some reason, instead of just throwing it, he just kind of stands there and waits, which gives us plenty of time to storm the castle, so to speak. However, once we save everyone and make it to the top of the tower, eventually shooting Lobato out of it, the other asylum members decide to just leave, seeing as they don't really have a reason to be there anymore, as they're more or less cured, with one of the other inmates snapping Boyd out of his fugue state. As he walks off, he haphazardly throws the flaming bottle over his shoulder, which Rube Goldbergs itself into the asylum's main gas line and blows up the entire building before we can search for Oleander and take him in for stealing the brains of the kids. Yeah, no, this game's fucking weird and I love it. In the rubble of the asylum, Raz and the others start to head back to the camp before they notice Oleander stumbling along and saying something about television. Sasha and Mia laugh it off, but Raz realizes what this means as the brain tank shoots out of the rubble with Oleander's brain inside. Quickly taking the tank down by himself, Raz goes to grab Ollie's brain, only to sneeze his own brain out, either from the dust of the rubble or a safety measure that the tank has, just coating it in sneezing powder, I guess. I don't fully understand, and I just know it happens. Seeing no other option, and his body walking off without him, Raz flings his own brain into the tank in hopes of removing Ollie's from it. Unfortunately, this ends up somewhat fusing their minds together, as Oleander's memories of his father's butcher shop and Raz's memories of his family's camp combined into the meat circus. Now, I didn't go into much detail with the other minds, as personally, I would prefer people experience the game's writing and storytelling themselves. I do want to talk about this stage, however, and with that, the game is 20 years old, and I do have a full playthrough on my channel. I don't want to spoil this, despite it being as old as it is. However, for the people who don't want to be spoiled, skip to the point on screen. As for everyone else, let's continue. So, at multiple points throughout the game, Raz makes mention of him growing up in a circus. It works as a way of explaining his acrobatic skills despite him being canonically 10. Now, he doesn't seem to resent living in a circus, but he does resent growing up in one, as his family was cursed to die by psychics if they were to approach water. And he always felt ostracized having these psychic abilities and not being able to use them, mostly because of this incident. He kept constantly hiding his abilities until he was given a pamphlet that mentioned a summer camp for psychics, where he would be able to learn and hone his abilities in secret. So, one night, he ran away from home to join this camp. One of the reasons he's upset at the fact that his family will be contacted to pick him up is he feels as though his father resents him for being born a psychic. A fact that he himself finds ironic, considering he does suspect his father of harboring psychic abilities. In fact, the many levels where Cruller teaches Raz's abilities to him are set at his family's caravan as a way to kind of relieve stress. When he's in this final area, he notices that the family circus that he remembers looks different, with Cruller telling him that's because his mind has been entangled with that of Oleander's. If you enter Oleander's basic braining at the beginning of the game, you can find a memory vault that shows him being rejected for every military job he applies for, which goes against the memory vault that he personally shows you of him being this sort of military hero. So that alone shows he has problems that he's not sharing. But here, we also learn he has an affinity for rabbits. This is a smaller thing that we see in that stage, where it's more of an Easter egg, whereas in this stage, it's much more pronounced. Here, we learn that Oleander's father was a butcher who would apparently kill the bunnies that Ollie would try and raise when Oleander was a kid. Hell, that's not surprising that it kind of fucked Ollie up. Unfortunately, this leads to one of the more annoying sections of this game, as we have to protect little Ollie as he chases a bunny around different areas. I fully understand why people don't like this part, as Ollie keeps screaming for the bunny while running around, and mangled rabbit creatures try and kill him. Of course, if he dies, it counts as a death for you as well. It is honestly an incredibly annoying section. After this, we fight Ollie's dad before doing a large platforming section with Raz trying to avoid rising water while chasing the memory of his own father. Once we catch up with that memory, he chastises Raz for having psychic abilities and using them to get past this circus act, before Raz's real father finally bursts through and enters his mind. See, as you play through this stage, there's a ghostly voice calling out to Raz. This is actually his father trying to reach him. He notices the memory that Raz has of him and how he seems to criticize practically everything Raz does, leading to Raz's actual father to tell him he never hated him for being a psychic. He just wanted his son to be happy and safe. Before they can detangle the two minds, however, the memories of the two fathers are combined after being flung into a giant meat grinder in the middle of the stage. See, at one point you have to fight both of them at the same time, with Raz's father throwing flaming bowling pins, and use those flaming bowling pins to fight Oleander's father before flinging him into the meat grinder. Once Raz's father finally gets to Raz, he flings the memory of him into the meat grinder as well, accidentally combining both of the fathers into this horrible, mangled mess. This final boss actually isn't really all that difficult, as Raz's father lends him his psychic power so he can easily fight this large monstrosity with a large figure of himself. Now, you only have a short time before Raz turns back to his normal size and has to recharge this new ability, but it's not that difficult. All you really have to do is just run away from the boss until the power is recharged and keep hitting it until it finally goes down. Once the boss is finally taken down, Raz and his father are taken outside of the Twisted Mine just in time for the camp's closing ceremony. Guess Augustus, Raz's father, let him stay the rest of the summer, or at least the rest of the period. Oleander is back to his somewhat normal state and apologizes for trying to steal the kids' brains. Raz is actually given the official title of Psychonaut before they are given the news that the head of the Psychonauts has been kidnapped, which turns out to be Lily's father. And Raz, with Sasha, Mia, and Oleander, heading off on a new adventure to try and save him. And that's where the story ends. For anyone coming in after the spoiler warning, hi. I didn't expect this video to be as long as it is, and frankly, I understand why. Because Psychonauts, ever since I first played it, has been one of my favorite games of all time. And I definitely had plenty to talk about. Hell, I still have stuff to talk about. I recommend, if you are curious about this game, even the smallest amount, to play it. Full stop. Even if you never finish it, at least try it. It's available on all major platforms, except, unfortunately, Nintendo. That being said, it is easily playable on PC and can run on a cheap Windows XP computer that you found on the road. It is interesting to me because the game itself also had a long-ass journey to get where it is. The game was shown off back in 2002 for the original Xbox and was intended to be an exclusive for it in 2003. Complete with Microsoft themselves originally planning to publish it. Unfortunately, for a few reasons, Microsoft eventually dropped out of publishing, stating that Double Fine was late on releasing the game, despite the fact that they're just busy. On top of that, Microsoft constantly butted heads with the people working on the game and kept asking for things like making the humor of the game its selling point to a lot of people secondary to the story, which is kind of ironic to think about. Luckily, in 2004, Majesco picked it up and they ended up releasing the game in 2005. Not that it really helped all that much, as the next generation of game consoles was right around the corner, and even the Xbox 360 released later in 2005. Pretty much everything was going against this game. However, the 20 or so people who actually got a chance to play it did love it. This game, for the longest time, was the definition of a cult classic. And luckily, Tim Schafer and the people who worked on it did not give up on it, this strange little platformer. Tim himself campaigned for Microsoft to make the game backwards compatible on Xbox 360, and Xbox even went so far as to make the game downloadable as a part of their Xbox Classics program back with the 360, so anyone who wanted to play it could. Plus, Double Fine worked their asses off to get the game on Steam, and with that, making the game accessible to pretty much everyone who ever wanted to try it. In fact, that alone makes me incredibly happy. Hell, if you want to try the PlayStation port, which wasn't done by Double Fine, it is available on PlayStation 4 and 5. That being said, this is an emulated version of the PS2 port, and the PS2 port kinda is the weaker of the three versions. I personally would recommend the PC version, mostly because you're getting the game in widescreen, and it just looks so nice. In fact, that's the version I played for this review. Again, if you have a chance to play this game in any way, even if you have to borrow a copy from a friend who's had it since 2005, play it. It's worth it. And I think that's helped me get out of my little funk. Thanks, Pixel. I have a few ideas. I would love to do the sequel game, but I'm gonna wait a while before I get to that one. And I still have to get ready for my big vacation next month. I do still have reviews planned for that month, but I want to keep them a bit of a surprise until then. I might put some smaller videos out in the meantime, though. Before I forget, though, if you get to level 100 of Raz's psychic level, there is a little secret cutscene, and I think that's a good place to end the video on. So until then, I'll see you guys next time.
What's going on? What's that sound?
Oh, the insane asylum just blew up! But don't worry, Mr. Pokelope helped me save all the brains before it fell down!
Mr. Pokelope? Sam, is that you? It's me, Linda, from the lake.
Linda, I haven't seen you in ages. You look so different.
Yeah, I've put on a little weight.
Oh, you know I don't mind that one bit.
Oh, Sam, you haven't changed at all.
TV! Hacky sack!
Yes, hacky sack.
Oh no! They're all brainless!
Hi, Raz.